Well, good day and Happy New Year to all, and welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting on Tuesday, the 3rd of January, 5:30. First item of business will be to review the minutes. We have the regular meeting minutes from the 5th of December. May we have a motion on that, please?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from the December 5th Board of Selectmen meeting.
I will second.
Moved and seconded. Do we have discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, we're ready to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we have the special meeting minutes of the 12th of December.
I'll make a motion to accept the special meeting minutes of December 12th, 2022.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion on those? All right, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Very good, thank you. We do not have communications that I'm aware of. This next item concerns appointments. January, as many know, is the month for appointing many board, commission, and committee people. That we will have a special meeting for later in the month to get that out there.
Jim, do we have public comment?
Yeah, I skipped public comment. Yeah, it didn't have a number in front of it. So, okay, so let's do this. Let's do the public comment. Any in the room who wish to make a public comment? George, you wish to?
I do, yes.
George Frampton, you want to bring a chair up? Or?
Right, bring one up. Thank you.
Okay, very fine. Appreciate it. Let me just say this before he begins. I hear background noise there. If someone's on the phone, please mute. The only person that should not be muted is Martha Shoemaker. George.
And thank you. I hope you'll excuse me if I'm a little hoarse. I am tested every day, but I'm getting over a cold.
Good.
I'm George Frampton, and with my wife, Carla DeRista, I am the owner of 12 and 19 Tentamahague Road in Old Lyme, and also the owner in fee simple of the parcel of land in the middle of our property, which was marked out in 1931 as Tentamahague Landing in Old Lyme, an area which basically encompasses our back driveway and part of our front yard. And obviously a great deal has been said over the last couple of years about the dispute about public access to our property. And one might think or hope that given all the new information that's come out in the last year and a half, including the ownership of the property, its original purpose for fresh water, the fact that the right-of-way that was laid out in 1701, that is the origin of all this, was actually on our neighbor's property as well as ours, and the fact that the surveyor who laid out the plat in 1931 left a memorandum in effect admitting that he had not mapped the original right-of-way, but gave the town what he hoped would be a new right-of-way to the river. And we've been asking for direct meetings, I think the public should know this, in writing and orally with the town for a year and a half, and been ignored until a month ago when there was some discussion, as Tim, you mentioned, about finding an arbitrator or going to the Attorney General's office. That occurred because we made that a written proposal to arbitrate, mediate, or use the Attorney General months ago. And I'm here because the discussion recently seems to us to be moving in a direction of either obfuscating some very important facts, which are going to be essential if we're going to settle this, or even not disclosing them to the public. And so we prepared a memorandum of fact that I want to submit and ask that it be treated as a public document. I brought 12 extra copies so the Selectmen's office can hand it out free of charge to people who want it. And I think, it's going to be very difficult to reach an agreement unless town officials are willing to acknowledge the truth of a few basic facts. And I'll just briefly summarize what's in the memorandum, the 4 facts that we assert there. I don't think it's going to take me more than 7 or 8 minutes to do that. First fact is, my wife and I are the sole owners of Tantamaheg Landing, our back driveway and our front yard. I realize this is a fact that some public officials don't really want to say out loud, and it took you 14 months after I submitted all the material, deed search, and historical material in June of last year to acknowledge, but you finally did have to let Town Council Jack Collins stand up at the last meeting here in August of Town Selectmen and make a public statement that there is no evidence that the town has any ownership interest at all in Tantamaheg Landing. And he read from a piece of paper that he had printed this out to make absolutely sure that there was, even though there weren't a lot of people around, that there was no misunderstanding or denigrating this. Ownership is not a matter of opinion. It's not something that can be disputed. It's a fact. We own it. Second fact is that our backyard is not a public highway. Now, I realize that when town realized it didn't own the property, it had to find some other explanation for its claims. But unfortunately for the town, every level of responsible government, the town itself, the State Highway Commission, the State Mapping Agency, the U.S. Post Office, have all been mapping Old Lyme since 1894. Each of these agencies officially has maps that show what is a public highway and what is private property. Starting in the mid-50s, these maps were filed every year. So if you look back 3/4 of a century, there are hundreds of official maps that indicate what is a public highway and what is not. And every single map, this starts in 1894, shows that Tantamaheg Road, a public road or highway or a public conveyance, comes from Neck Road, Route 156, toward the river, eastward, stops before it gets to our property, turns right, goes up the hill, away from the river, into the private property of 3 of our neighbors. Our driveway and the driveways of other people who are between us and Neck Road on Tantamaheg Road, their driveways and our driveways are private property. That's a consistent governmental mapping. Even the U.S. Postal Service has for decades had route carriers maps that show exactly the same thing. And I think it's unrealistic to think that in the future the Attorney General or some judge or some decision maker is going to throw out 3/4 of a century of definitive government mapping that Tantamaheg Road as a public road does not go into our property just because some people in Old Lyme think that it should. The third fact is what I've heard you say, Tim, and others have said, well, people have been walking down that there, for 300 years. That is not a true statement. That's false news. And I think that you actually know, and the public should know, that our driveway never even was put in until 75 years or so after the right-of-way was created in 1701. The right-of-way goes down both sides of the brook to the mouth of the brook, not on our driveway or house property. That right-of-way probably was not used after 1725 because the owner of the property, Richard Lure, deeded it to his son in a notarized deed specifically with no right-of-ways on the property. But whatever happened in the 1700s and the 1800s, we know that it was gone by 1905 because the surveyor who came in 1931 to look for basically old highways that the town was concerned might have been lost, to save a route. He knew that had been gone because he surveyed the neighbor's property in 1898 and knew it wasn't there. And he also knew that the mouth of the brook was dammed and an ice pond was created before 1905. So he knew that by 1905, the original right-of-way was long gone, was underwater, in fact, in 1931. But his charge from the town was to try to find access to the river. So he simply mapped out our back driveway and our front yard as the right-of-way, not the original right-of-way, a different right-of-way. We know he did this intentionally because he wrote a memorandum to the town's selectmen, all three of them. He typed it very carefully, signed it. It was an official document submitted with the survey in which he admits that that's what he did. He created a new right-of-way that the town could claim to the river. But of course, even he notes in that document that the owner to the land would have to give it up by changing her deed. And of course, that never happened. That's a document that at some point mysteriously has disappeared from town files. Don't know how, but we know that your council found it, and you have a copy, and we have a copy. And that's a document that you've chosen not to share with the public as well. Finally, fourth fact, I think, is relates to a statement that you made at town meeting. I was there, that the town has an implied right to tell us, to allow you to come on the property with a bulldozer and hold a press conference, which you did, to tell us to put street signs up on our property. The town has an implied right to tell us certain things that we have to do on our property. And the fact that I want to stress, and is in our memorandum, is that you can look it up. Implied rights are rights not found in the law. That's the definition of an implied right. Not found in the law. Doesn't mean that there's no right. Doesn't mean that the town doesn't have some rights. What it means is that it's not in the statute books or the land records or a court order. It's a claim of right made from historic use. To give you an idea of an implied right, to explain what that is, Vladimir Putin claims he has an implied right to tell the government of Ukraine what to do on its territory and its sovereignty because of historic Russian interest in the sovereignty of Ukraine. There are people who believe that's a reasonably serious claim. He didn't go to court, though. He went to war. Implied rights don't come into existence. They can't be enforced unless you get a court to agree that you have the right and to define it with great specificity based on the type of historical use, the time, what seasons, and so forth, and how regular it was, and so on. Implied right in the United States, you can't go to war first. You have to go to court. Otherwise, the right doesn't exist, and it's not enforceable. Now, God knows, of course the town can go to court and try to enforce an implied right against us. But I don't think nobody wants litigation. Litigation is horrible. Good part of my career before I started doing mostly environmental work, I was a litigator. I litigated some of the most difficult, complicated cases in the United States. Nobody likes litigation. You go to litigation, claim you have a right, we'll claim there's no right because the right-of-way is long gone hundreds of years ago, and anyway, any recent use is based on basically a fraudulent survey, known to be fraudulent because the record was there. Even if a court rejects both of those defenses, There'll be a long battle about exactly what rights are involved. Nobody wants that, but it's completely unnecessary here to have litigation, and it's completely unnecessary to continue to have a standoff where we feel that public officials are basically sort of blowing smoke at the towns, fake news, and not explaining what the facts are. And if we're going to have a meaningful set of discussions, at least public officials have to recognize, true facts and not facts that are just made up. So I want to submit this document, and I hope that there's an opportunity to engage in direct talks with the town to see if we can settle this. We've had some conversations with our neighbors on Colt Lane, as I think you know. There's some possibility that an agreement could be worked out that would be quite acceptable to most and maybe even all of them. This is not difficult. It may be impossible to work out a deal, but it would be very, very beneficial to everyone to have a long-term plan that fits the needs and rights of the public, the people who want to walk on our driveway. From the very beginning, we've allowed anybody who wanted to, our neighbors, they walk on the driveway, they love the natural set, they come to the river and the pond, they're very happy. And that's 98 or 99% of the people who will use it and actually use our driveway. So it may be possible to work out a long-term plan that suits the public interest, public rights, and respects our privacy and our safety and our security. Right now, my wife will not stay in our house when I'm gone unless somebody else is living on the property. Okay? We thought we were moving to a town where public officials respected facts and law and wanted neighbors to get along with each other, not be at each other's throats. But that's the situation we have now, and it can't continue. But if we're going to have a meaningful set of discussions about this, it's going to have to be based on real facts, not made-up facts. And that's an obligation that you have. You've sworn an oath, public officials, to respect what are real facts and law, what's in your own files, and we think we're entitled to hold you to it. So I appreciate the fact that I have the opportunity to do this. That's very important, and I thank you. And I'm going to give you 4 copies of this and an additional 12 copies, which I hope you will make available at the site.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Very good. All right, so we have,
Single copies.
pardon me?
Copy.
Yeah.
Will one of you please put one in my box?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. All right, thank you, George. As I said before, no communications. What's that?
Microphone back towards you. The microphone's facing away from you.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah. Gotcha. Appointments, we will schedule a special meeting later in the month to cover that. We're working on that at the moment. So as we get the projects, the first one is the Halls Road improvement. The bids for the engineering part of it came in as requested, and we had 3 bids. We had a bid from BSC, from Glastonbury, Jacobson Engineering from Chester, and AI Engineers from Middletown. The prices were quite at variance. The BSC proposal was for $429,900. The Jacobson proposal was for $260,700, and the AI Engineers came in at $148,500. That's quite variance. So I think that the Halls Road Committee would like to interview, I'm not sure if it's all the firms or a couple of the firms, to have them make a presentation before we all caucus and make a decision on how to proceed. I think we stated before that we have some American Rescue Plan funds in the amount of $138,000 to help towards this project. So that's where we are with that. And probably, I think the Halls Road Committee will not be meeting in January, but hopefully a meeting of the engineers can occur in February, and then we can come up with a plan here. The next item is, actually, Soundview sidewalks. There's nothing much to report. Previously, we said that there'll be some punch list items that would fit within the contingency, and so some of that work will have to occur in warm weather. We've made some calculations. I think we will need to return about $14,000 to the state of Connecticut, which would be the unused grant funds within that $400,000 grant. So that will all be wrapped up here, probably, I would say, by Memorial Day, with the grass growing and so forth. Soundview Sewers, there's to be a Zoom call tomorrow with some of the people involved with that group. There has been really no activity. The grants that we were hoping would be forthcoming from our congressmen, our senators, and even the state of Connecticut, we don't have anything to report. It may be that we could look forward to making a bond, get on the agenda for the bond funding at some point. But in terms of any specific grant, nothing's been forthcoming. So I'm not sure what the nature of the call will be tomorrow, but we'll see where that goes. So not really any update there. The senior center expansion, that work continues. Point One Architects, they're doing their work on the drawings for that, and I think that'll proceed during the next 2 or 3 months, and then I expect once those drawings are complete, then we will be approaching the time to put that project out to bid. But I don't have any specific timing on that. The Ferry Road sidewalk, I and the engineer had a meeting with the abutters at 11 Ferry Road, and it is confirmed that the vinyl fence is on the town right away. So that's not in dispute. The question is, what do we do about it? And so there was an idea that if the sidewalk were modified a little bit, might that mitigate things? One obvious choice would be that the fence would need to be moved back behind the property line. It is, at the present time, basically touching the north side of the sidewalk. So if there was a modification, and the engineer was saying, well, in that area, it becomes flatter, and so it could be that the road could be widened to create an area to have cars pull off the road surface, not maybe entirely, but more than now happens. Because it's somewhat flat, the cars roll up onto the lawn in front of the house. as you get closer to the Congregational Church, the bank is higher and the cars can't do that. But as you get to where this property is, it's flatter and cars roll up on the lawn, and that gets a little threadbare over time. Not that that happens all that frequently, but if there's an event at the church, it does. So we said we look at an alternate proposal, but we're certainly not saying that the fence can stay, and we're not saying it has to be removed immediately. So we're waiting to see what the engineer comes up with, but we do want to have that resolved fairly quickly. The next item is the Swan Brook outlet. We do have, with respect to clearing the pipe, the west pipe, as we've reported before, there are two 36-inch pipes which go under the beach, where Swan Brook stops at the north end of the beach. So these pipes go under the sand, probably for, let's say, 400 or 500 feet, and then they emerge at Long Island Sound. So the western pipe has been blocked for probably several years. I'm not sure when it was last running. The eastern pipe will block, but then the pressure from the water in the brook will blow it out if there's a good-sized rainstorm. So the goal would be to clean out the western pipe so it too would run more freely, and then when that is done, to then rebuild the wood crib, which the DEP has agreed we can do with a certificate of permission. So we have two proposals, one from two different contractors, and one is a per diem of $2,000 a day to work an 8-hour day to jet out the sand and debris in the pipe. The second proposal basically works on an hourly basis with various equipment, and if one were to take an 8-hour day, that price would be $5,160 per day versus $2,000 for the other contractor, and then there'd be a demobilization fee of $1,500. So I talked with the public works superintendent. Both of these, certainly the $6,000 bidder proposal is a known because that company does the catch basin cleaning for the town, and so Public Works is well familiar with that firm. And the other one I think is a very credible firm as well. So on the money alone, it would seem that the first proposal, the $2,000 a day one, would be the less expensive and therefore the one we should take. Connecticut Water would supply a fitting to go on the hydrant, which would be at the end of Pond Road, and then a 2.5-inch hose could be connected to that hydrant and delivered to the equipment. In both cases, the equipment requires fresh water as opposed to seawater, because seawater is detrimental to the machinery. And so depending on how quickly things go, that might take a day, 2 days, 3 days. We're not sure what's in the pipe exactly. We have a feeling it's not that huge a block. When I tried to measure it, I think it's probably something like 30, 35 feet, but it's difficult to be accurate on that. So the work would likely, we would want to have the work done at low tide, of course, because with high tide, you can't work in the pipe. So it looks like January 16th, that week, would be good because low tide is at, I think it's around 11:30 a.m., and that would give reasonable work time on both sides of low tide. Once that's freed up, then the next stage would be to put the wood crib back together properly, and hopefully with the wood crib installed, it would keep the sand from coming into the pipe the way it did. But Long Island Sound, no guarantees, but that's the hope. But I don't recall in the past that with the wood crib in reasonable shape that there was the sand got into the pipe and clogged it that way. So we're wondering if there's some other impediment in the pipe beside just sand and so forth. So that looks like we might be working on this in the second half of January, perhaps into February a little bit, and if we're lucky, the temperature would be favorable to doing that work.
So, Tim, it's Martha. Yeah. I have a question. Do we have to make a motion on this to accept the bid, or are you accepting the bid on behalf of the town?
Yeah, I talked to Ed, and he thought that the less expensive bid would be the one to take. I think it would be helpful to have it. I can explain more about the bids if you'd like. As I say, the firm that has the $2,000 a day one does our catch basin cleaning, so he is a known commodity to Ed, and I think the equipment is very similar. I think the second company has a couple of pieces of equipment more than the catch basin firm, which of course adds to the price. And a mobilization fee is another item that is not present in the catch basin one. So I think with the lower price and seemingly good work heretofore, that's the one we should take. So if it's the sense of the board, it would be good to have a motion. I'd be happy to proceed that way.
Do we have a name for this company?
Yes, it's called Monster-Vac LLC. Monster-Vac LLC. Normally, the vac part of it is that you put a big hose into the catch basin and you suck out all the debris in the catch basin, and that gets rid of, if left unattended, the catch basin becomes filled with sand and other stuff, and it's not usable. So we yearly use a vac contractor to come, and I don't know how many catch basins we have, but probably 300 or 400 I would expect around town. So that's Monster-Vac LLC. They're based in Rhode Island and have been doing work for the town for a reasonable period of time. The other firm is DDI, which is Drain Doctor Incorporated, and one of the principals is a resident of town, so he actually looked at the situation with a few of us who went down to see what needs to be done, and he said it would be a real process to get this stuff out of the pipe, but his price is significantly more.
So now I can't see paperwork. I don't know if you're looking at it or whatever, but I'm going to let you make a motion if you feel comfortable based on what you see.
Okay, I have paperwork here, so Tim just passed it to me, so I make a motion that the town engages in a contract with Monster-Vac LLC for work at Swanbrook Outlet, not to exceed 6,000? Is that, or are you willing not to put a number?
I think it might be wise to say at a rate of $2,000
At a
a
rate
day.
of $2,000 a day, depending on the work involved.
Are we going to include the not to exceed 6,000?
Excuse me? Could you say that again, Martha?
Oh, is the motion saying at $2,000 a day not to exceed $6,000?
I think putting a limit on it, in as much as we don't know exactly what's in there, I think 3 days would be more than enough. He put that number in there, but it's sort of a per diem type thing, because in the event that there's something really troublesome.
Right. And in fact, they're probably only getting like maybe 4 hours, right? You mean low tide's at 11:30,
Well,
9:30,
I think we can work.
If you're lucky, everything cooperates.
Let me see. The 16th, low tide's at 11:30, so you could work 4 hours before and 4 hours after.
Okay.
The next day, it's an hour later, 12:30. Then the next day, it's 1:30.
Right.
So for that week, it creeps ahead about an hour a day. So if the weather is not like 0 degrees, that would be an ideal time to work before and after the low tide. The town would supply a backhoe to scoop out the residue that comes out of the pipe, which would save us probably, compared to having a loader down, a hoe down there. So I would hesitate to limit it. I mean, 3 days is probably enough, but it's hard to say what a not to exceed should be, because you wouldn't want to get to the max and then they have to work another day or something.
Right.
Okay, so the motion's going to read to enter into a contract with Monster Valley LLC at $2,000 a day.
Yes, to clean out the west pipe of the Swanbrook outlet.
Okay, so I will second that motion.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Any other discussion on it?
I would just like a daily update.
Yeah, I think definitely be focused on that. If I'm right and it's like 35 feet, I think it'll go fairly quickly.
I want to know what they're finding, too. I mean, it would be interesting to know what's causing the fog beyond sand.
I think we're going to find a mix of sand and phragmites that comes from Swanbrook, the stalk stuff. Some have said there may be a rock in there, but who knows?
There's no concern about the structural stability of the pipe or anything, right?
No, this stuff was put in the 40s, so it's a pretty hefty concrete pipe. So I don't think there's any problem with that.
It's concrete?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? All in
Sure.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Thank you. Tanamahague Landing, you heard from Mr. Frampton. I have some signage possibilities that were created by Edie Twining. I don't know if you guys saw the mock-up, but it would be, did you see it, Matt?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. It would be Tanamahague Landing for the hours, and then the way we originally worked it and the way this works is that once you went in, there would be a sign that would point to the landing where you go, and then it would say private driveway, no entry. So that would be the schematic that we've developed, and so we don't have these signs, but that's what what's come through. And I think partly you've seen the mock-up, right?
Yes, I have. I've seen Edie's mock-up. But are we going to have a discussion with Mr. Frampton before this takes place or after what he said?
Well, I think we could have a meeting, and, I think obviously we've been relying on Attorney Collins' firm, so we have to sort things out and see if we can come to some accord. Obviously, I think there are two opinions on this road, and we've noticed over the months that shrubbery's been planted and other things have been put onto the surface. So obviously, we've got to get, either we're going to try to come up with something in the way of an agreement, or what? It's going to be, I guess, our call. He and his wife have made it pretty clear that they think that not only we don't own the property, we have no road on which to base that we can use the road. So if that becomes something that has to be sorted out, either we do it in a congenial way without a lot of lawyers and process, or because I know that when this matter came up, unlike this, it wasn't challenging the ownership. It was having to do with swapping Tanamahague Landing for property on the Black Hall River. It was a very emotional time, and it attracted a lot of attention. So we're sensitive to the fact that people are very protective of this landing. And if we can work it out where people can enjoy the landing, the devil's in the details as to how one gets to the landing. And if anyone wants to kayak, if you have to portage or kayak, that would seem to be pretty tough. So we'll see. I guess it's worth talking, and we've done that, and maybe we can try again, and we need to come to some accord or not. So I guess that's where we are.
Well, I hope that we can set something up. So I think it's time that we sit down.
Yes, because it's been a long haul, and we've identified the boundaries, I guess, but we haven't come to an agreement. So that's what we need. The next item is buttonball. The committee met in December, and there was discussion amongst the members of the committee about the harbor management their jurisdiction would be from the mean high water down to in the marsh, basically, and then open space. Generally speaking, they would be the hard ground. There was discussion, obviously, about what sort of access is appropriate. I think the point was made during the meeting that even though the deed specifies that public access to the Connecticut River is in the deed, I think it was Mr. Aurelia was saying that, these are not, and maybe others, these are not ironclad. If you go back to the DEP and say, we have an environmental report that indicates that the marsh is somewhat fragile and public access on foot and boats and people all over the place would be a bad idea, they might relent and say, we'll pull that out of the deed. So even though it's there, the DEP hasn't asked the town to make that possible for all these years since 70 wet, when it was acquired. But it would, I think one of the recommendations will be that I think the DEP was identified as an entity that might do some work on that aspect of it, to the ecological effect on the marsh that public access would create. So I don't think any of us think that we should start a platform and so forth right now. I think we'd want to understand this whole thing. I know that members have also mentioned that there's a large portion of the tide sequence that the thing is really not very navigable. Yeah, you can get out to the center of the channel, but if you had a dock with a ramp and a floating float, that would have to be in the channel to be floating. And how wide is the channel? So if other people wanted to use the channel and you had this dock in the channel, that might be a problem. And I think just if there's a lot of mud and people get in there that are not familiar and they get out of the boat and they're stuck in the mud, they might find them in the spring or in the fall. So there's work to be done. I think that the committee wants to get a proposal to the Board of Selectmen in a not-too-distant future. I think there's still some distance between where the two commissions are, and we'll just wait for them to go through it. But I guess if you were to have an observation platform, for instance, that might be relatively short but protrude out into the marsh a little bit, and you might have a bench or a little area out there so people could go out and enjoy the view and so forth. That might be more of like a bench on the shore, and this platform, it wouldn't be direct access to the water. So I think this water access thing and the marsh fragility needs to be vetted, and if we can get that, I don't know. A lot of these agencies they're understaffed, and I think a question would be, how long would it take to get the DEP to do such a study? And is it going to be the dock permitting people, or is it another part of the DEP? Not sure. So this is still work in progress, and luckily it's this time of year, so it's not that critical at the moment, but it'd be nice to have it figured out in the first quarter.
Yeah, I know the last meeting I wasn't able to attend, but I know it went back and forth, and it's getting heated again in between both a couple of committees, and I just want to remind everybody that we're all ultimately the same goal for the town, is giving people access to the water in the best possible way, and just kind of going back to their own little groups. And I've listened to a couple of meetings online, and people are coming up with ways to try to block progress, and I just want everyone to take a step back, revisit what the original goal was, and we were making progress. We had the phase one all complete, and now I feel like it's kind of a little hiccup. So I just want everyone to try to think about working together. It's a new year, clean slate. Let's try to work together to come up with a good plan that makes sense and it's feasible and environmentally sound. So I just had to say that.
Yep.
I agree with you, Matt.
The next one is the Shoreline Gateway Committee. We have the two chairs present, so do you want to comment on that at all? Or?
Unfortunately, we had to cancel our meeting in December. Just the schedules got crazy, so we still haven't. We're still evaluating the survey details. A couple members were teamed up to come up with a Reader's Digest version of the results for each executive report. Is that what it was called, Martha? I'm sorry.
Yes, executive summary.
The executive summary for certain questions we felt were necessary. So we're going to meet in January and hopefully have something to present to the board at the next meeting and just give you a summary of what the results were.
Wonderful.
So our next meeting is on the 19th, and then we'll have an update for you on. We will have an update for you on February.
Okay, that'll be fine. Next item is the executive assistant to the first selectman, Katie Balaka, started today, and she's already doing great things with appointments.
Jump right into it. Great month to start. That's
important. So she's going to be, I'm very confident she'll be terrific, so that's nice. We also had, on the 15th of December, the retirement party for Mary Lynn Clark, who served as the town attorney for many years and as the registrar of voters recently. I think it was about 36 or 7 years of combined service, so that was quite nice. Up in the senior center, Martha and some others put together a very nice function for her, and I think she was very, very pleased with it, so that was great. Turning to new business, we also on the 15th of December, we had a swearing-in ceremony for Ethan Kula. Ethan has been a police ranger for, I think, 3 years, and was kind of one of the lead dogs of the Rangers, and so he applied to be a police officer. That first step would be that he goes to the police academy in Meriden, and that's from January through, is it June or July?
July 4th. The week of July 4th, I think he gets out.
So, yeah. And assuming a successful completion of that, he will then be sworn in as a police already. So he could then begin his field training here in Old Lyme, and then probably, a couple months he'd be ready to go?
Yep. Hopefully by end of summer.
Yeah. With him back, or with him on the force, that would give us 5 out of 6 police billets filled. We're presently at 4 plus Ethan. So
3 part-timers.
Yeah, so we're using some of our part-time people to help out.
Do you want me to make a motion to add the transfer station fee stuff?
Oh, right, yeah.
So I can make a motion to add the transfer station, discussion regarding the transfer station fees to new business letter B.
I'll second.
Okay, good, thank you. Yeah, the transfer station fees, at the urging of Public Works Superintendent and the transfer station supervisor, John Reddy, he said we're paying a lot more to get rid of things than we did a year or two ago, and the fees haven't really changed. So we modified the fees, and I think it goes from I think it's $150. No, was it $120 a ton?
That's what I was.
I don't have the sheet.
I got the sheet. I just didn't know where it changed.
Yeah. Okay. So we were $120 a ton, which is 5.5 cents per pound, and it goes to $150 a ton. And there's a minimum fee, and we increased the fees for tires a little bit, and I don't think we changed upholstered furniture, and propane tanks are the same. Concerning brush, that went up, I think, from $45 to $60. And again, it used to be the chips would be taken away from the tub grinder at no charge, and now we're paying to transportation and disposal costs, so we had to increase that. And let's see, with respect to if people bring in leaves, that also went up slightly for leaf disposal. So not radical, but they haven't been adjusted in a while. And the problem was that we are paying vendors where this stuff goes quite a premium. So without moving the fees, we're losing money. So if the selectmen have seen the fee schedule and understand what's changing and what's not, again, it's not earth-shaking, but it's important because we're underwater.
So I'm happy to make a motion to accept the new fees as outlined on the 2-page document that was updated earlier last week. But I would like to also say that this needs to be posted on our website as a new.
It was posted on the website over the weekend.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. So we have a motion from
A second her motion.
and Mr. Ward. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, very good. All right, anything, let's see, I guess old business, or other business, other business Selectmen want to bring up.
There are 2 things that we had gotten a note from the Board of Finance to add. We need to discuss where the opioid funds are going to be directed, and we also were asked to invite Joanne DiCamilla to come before the Board of Selectmen and explain her request and her letter from December 13th that she sent to the Finance Department. So perhaps we could invite Joanne to come to our February meeting so that she could explain her request. And if we could, I think we should have a discussion about the opioid funds also perhaps at the February meeting, and maybe ask Mary Seidner to come and provide us with some information, or Allison Benke, who works with the Lyme Prevention Coalition.
Okay, yeah, I think there was some unofficial discussion about youth service would be probably a good destination. We're talking, I think, $390. So it's not that big a sum. There could be subsequent money coming from this whole effort.
Yeah. I know other towns did give it to their youth service bureaus.
Yeah, because they do have a drug prevention program.
I also noticed in the paper this morning that whatever you're getting this year seems to be it's going to be a yearly contribution for a number of years. But there was an article in the paper, and now I can't remember what town it was, either Norwich or New London, and it stated that those funds would be coming on a yearly basis. So we should check into that.
All right, yeah. And I'm not sure if other companies were roped into it. I think this was mainly from the one Purdue, and I'm not sure if there are other. I think the drugstores are paying pretty big money. I don't know if that's considered opiate settlement or not. But, yeah, you're right. There could be downstream money.
But I think when we're talking about the opiate funds, that we should also, will we determine where the bottle deposit money, the NIPS
well,
money is going?
That's different. There are specific rules for that the state put out.
Right.
So that Solid Waste and Recycling Committee is attuned to that.
I know Martha and I had talked about, when we went to the CCM conference, there was some equipment like for cleaning up sides of the roads, like bags that people could do and pickers and like different things. They could use that money towards maybe doing some organized recycling efforts, or at least clean up. We find all these bottles and cans and nips on the side of the road.
Right.
So. And
I know that we've received 2 installments.
Right.
One was $3,000 for the winter months, and the other was around $4,500 for the summer months.
Right.
And if you divide by a nickel, the $4,500 check translates to 90,000 nips that were sold in Old Lyme. Old Lyme. We have 2 little liquor stores and the Grand Wine one in the shopping center. 90,000 of those things.
And 45,000 of those are along 156.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we used to do the Adopt a Highway pretty much on 156 from the bridge to East Lyme, and there were some, you could tell that was a popular thing. So I think I think this motion, if you want, we could get I don't know whether we can just do a motion now and say let's put it to the LYSB, or you want to wait and see what other things may surface. But
I think they have. and they
I would feel
make
more,
use of the money, you know? I'm sorry, Martha, go ahead.
I just would feel more comfortable if we could just do a little research to see if there's more money coming this year and if it is coming on a yearly basis. And then we could ask Mary for some input and
Okay.
before we vote.
Okay.
All right, and then we'll do the same with the committee, the solid waste gang on the NIP money.
Yeah, we grabbed some pamphlets and different stuff of different equipment they have.
Yeah, and it, obviously it's got to translate to, picking up the environment.
Right,
stuff.
I agree.
Yeah.
And Matt, I did go to the solid waste committee last month and asked if we could do a townwide cleanup in the spring. And I provided them with some of the information that we picked up that day. So
Okay,
they do have that. But yeah, so.
I know the community service club and the high school is always looking for something to do. So I know they do beach cleanups and different things. So they're always looking for different projects.
They talked about that, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's already a group that does White Sand Beach every year. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so we have those three things, the opioid, the Joanne, and the NIP money.
Right.
Anything else?
Not for me.
Nope.
Okay,
All right.
Motion to adjourn?
At 6:31,
Second.
moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thanks for joining us, Martha.
Yeah, get better.
Thanks. I will be. Talk to you later. Bye.